Well guys, it seems as if I cannot figure out how to put an intake manifold on a small block Chevy. So ever since I built this engine, it's had a coolant leak. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with, you've seen it. Now I didn't film it, but I have taken this entire manifold back off, resealed it with new gaskets and everything. It's still leaking, so you know what they say, third time's a charm. We're gonna try it for the third time. And I'm kind of wondering now if something is machined wrong. I mean, they're brand new heads, so the heads should be okay, and the block doesn't look like it's ever been decked. So I know when you deck the block or deck the heads, that'll kind of mess things up and you got to machine the intake as far as I know, or just run like thicker gaskets. But the block hasn't been machined as far as I know, and the heads haven't been machined. So I don't know, that seems good to me. I can set the manifold on with no gaskets and the angles look perfect. I'm gonna go through again and just double check everything. The only other thing that could have happened when I put the manifold on is those gaskets moved. So we got a few things we got to check over, but either way, I gotta get this fixed. Let's check this out real quick. I don't even know, the coolant probably has dried up since I haven't ran this thing. Oh no, there's some down in there. So you can see right down in here, it's leaking in the same exact spot where it was leaking before. And then if I look up on the back side, the back is leaking on the manifold here and kind of running down the head on the back of the engine. So it's definitely, we got to get this fixed. So we got to strip everything off the top of this engine, which I mean, it doesn't look like much, but it does take some time because distributor's super tight and we got to do all the timing again. We got to drain all the fuel out of the fuel rails. I mean, it's a fair amount of work, but we got to do it. Let's get this thing up in the shop and figure out what is going on with this intake manifold leak. Well, I figured I'd plug my own stuff for a second. Check out these hood struts. If you guys aren't familiar with the channel, I produce hood struts for a bunch of different Toyotas, Tacomas, 4Runners, even the old FJ40s. If you guys want to check these things out, head over to avrcustoms.com. I'll have it linked down below. These things make it super nice. I mean, without that prop rod right in your way, right in the front of the engine bay, and the hood just opens up all by itself. Super nice to have. Either way, let's get to work. Let's rip this manifold off and get some new gaskets on here, figure out what is going on. Well, we got everything apart. A couple things I noticed. I already pulled this up, but the gasket on the head side, you can see is glued and sealed perfectly around these ports here. You can see, look at that, the gasket rips and the sealant adhered to the heads. On the manifold, not so much. You can see I haven't touched these back ports at all, and there's no sealant stuck onto the gasket. And there was actually, on the side that was leaking up here in the front, there was like a passageway of straight bare aluminum. So for some reason, the sealant isn't adhering to this manifold, and I know I cleaned it, but this time I want to make extra sure it's clean, and I think I might actually scuff it up with some Scotch-Brite just to get a little bit of a scratch on it. Maybe that'll help with the sealant kind of adhering to the actual manifold. And then one other thing I'll show you in a second, but it almost looks like you can see there's a cut in the head right here. And that little lip, the manifold is super close to that. It could be the manifold hitting that edge and not allowing it to completely seat against the heads on these raised sections here. So I might just put a little bit of a bevel on these edges here just to make sure that's going to seal up. But either way, let's get everything cleaned up. I want to get the manifold back onto the engine, make sure all the angles look good. I have checked it, but I'm going to check it again, maybe get some feeler gauges and make sure the angles look good. From looking at this on the back here, it looks like the sealant squished out pretty dang evenly around the back of these coolant ports, so I don't think those angles are off at all. And like I said, the block hasn't been decked, and obviously these heads haven't been surfaced at all, so I don't think that's the issue. I think it is maybe a couple different things with, maybe I don't know. I know I cleaned this surface, but maybe there was still some sort of oil around some of these ports. But either way, let's get all this gasket material cleaned up, set the manifold back on, check our angles, and then what I'm gonna use for gaskets is, I actually have two sets. One is the Felpro 1205 S3, that is a steel core gasket, and then the 1205 here is a non-steel core. I'm gonna see what one fits better, and I'll probably just use the steel core again, but I'm also gonna use this high-tack sealant to kind of glue the gasket in place onto the heads to make sure they don't shift at all when we set the manifold down. So I think that'll help. I'm still going to use this Right Stuff gasket maker around the coolant ports. Everybody recommends this stuff right here. But either way, we got to get this dang thing to seal up. So let's figure this out. Let's get this manifold back on and see what we can do. Well, I don't know, guys, that angle looks absolutely perfect from the head to the intake manifold on both sides. I think it looks perfect. There's no gap at all. I think those angles are perfect. And then also what I was saying earlier, the manifold might be hitting the heads. There's definitely clearance. I can move it probably a 1/16 back and forth before it hits that little edge. So I'm not even gonna bother putting a taper or just grinding that at all, because it clears just fine. It has to be something with that intake manifold just not being clean enough, I think. I don't know, it's the only conclusion I can come to, because everything else looks absolutely perfect. All right, we're ready to go back together. I already cleaned that surface with brake cleaner, and then I grabbed some lacquer thinner, and look what came off. It is still pretty dang dirty after brake cleaner. So I'm just gonna go over this whole surface until we don't get any more crap coming off. See, it looks pretty clean there. Looks pretty clean. I think a few wipes with lacquer thinner, I think that'll do the job. Well, we're all back together, just getting ready to bleed the coolant. Now, a couple things I'm gonna do different. I'm gonna swap this coolant out. This is the original coolant that was in the truck, which looked really nice and clean, but it almost looks straight, like undiluted straight coolant. So what I did, I just went and bought more coolant and mixed it 50-50 with distilled water. Not that it probably will make any sort of difference, but just to make sure, wanna make sure we got the correct coolant in it. And then I'm gonna swap the radiator cap. This is, it had a 16-pound cap or 16 psi. The one I picked up here is a 9 psi cap. So since you asked, let's talk about radiator caps real quick. So the purpose of a radiator cap obviously is to keep your coolant in, but it's got a pressure spring on it. This is, like I said, a 9 psi spring. So when the coolant system reaches 9 psi, the spring will open and relieve the pressure and kind of regulate that pressure in the cooling system to 9 psi. Now, why do you want pressure in your cooling system? Well, the higher the pressure, the higher the boiling point of the coolant actually is. So I think 50/50 coolant boils at about 232 degrees. On a 16-pound cap, that raises almost to 270. If you're at 270 degrees, you got other problems. So this cap, the 9-pound or 9 psi cap, should still be good to around 250, which, like I said, if you're hitting 250, you got other problems. But the main reason I'm dropping this, even the factory Toyota heater core and everything else in the truck is rated for like 13, but with the amount of coolant leaks I've had, I'm gonna try a 9 psi and see if that helps, because since I've got this thing together, I've had probably 15 different coolant leaks. Every single fitting on this truck has leaked. I've had to go replace fittings, reseal fittings. There's been so many leaks. So I'm gonna try a 9 psi cap. I think that'll help keeping the pressure down a little bit. I think that'll help the leaks. And like I said, the only really downside is the boiling point is a little bit lower now. But like I said, if you're hitting 250 degrees, you're causing engine damage anyway with, you know, burning a head gasket up. So I'm not worried about that. The different pressure really has no effect on the operating temperature. It just raises the boiling point with a higher pressure. So we're gonna try that. We're gonna fire this thing up, bleed it, check timing, and then once we're all bled, we'll get that 9 psi cap on, pressurize the system, and I really, really, really hope we have no coolant leaks. Well, we got it bled. So far so good, but it's always leaked after I put the cap on and you build some pressure. So before we go drive it, I kind of want to throw the grill and the front bumper on just for temporary, just to kind of make it look like a truck again anyway. I actually did license it, but I want to get the front end on real quick and then we'll get the cap on. Once it kind of cools off and it pulls its antifreeze in to the system, we'll put a cap on it and we'll go drive it and see if that leak is fixed. Well, there goes nothing. Got the cap on. Let's go drive it, see what it does. Shortly into our drive, we got some lifter making noise over here. It's definitely on this side. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm gonna pull the valve cover off and check all the clearances on the rocker arms. I'm hoping it's that. I'm really hoping it's not a lifter because I don't see any leaks yet, and we got plenty of pressure in the system. But to get to the lifters, you gotta pull the intake back off. I'm so sick and tired of pulling this freaking intake off. So I'm gonna pull the valve cover off. I'm not sure what's going on. It's always been silent. Now, for some reason it's making noise. So could just be an adjustment. Who knows? Let's figure this out. Well, I found the problem. We are at top dead center on compression stroke. So there's a certain number of valves we can adjust now, and then we will turn the crank 180 degrees and then we can adjust the other ones. But you can see these are all tight. And then you get to that one and it's floppy loose. So something's going on there. I don't know if it's the adjustment that loosened up or the lifter yet, but I'm gonna try to adjust it, and I'm just gonna go through all of them. So we'll adjust the ones we can right now, and then we'll turn the crank over, adjust the rest, but that's definitely the cause of our noise. So we basically just want to take the lash out of the lifter so it's not clanking around anymore. And then we're going to do a half a turn for some preload on that lifter. So just like that, half turn. Now that's nice and snug. Well, that was it. She's purring like a kitten now. Much better. Oh yeah. All right, now we're gonna go rip this thing. Sounds so much better without that lifter. I'm almost thinking it's like a lock nut. I'm almost wondering if that one's worn out because it was so quiet and then randomly it must have loosened up. I might have to just swap all of those little lock nuts on the lifters, but we're nice and quiet now. Let's go take this thing for a rip. Well guys, our fun is cut short. That lifter that was loose, I tightened it up and I made it like 2 miles down the road and it's loose again, clanking around. I pulled it back apart. I verified it is the nut actually backing out, and those are actually lock nuts on the studs, and that one is definitely worn out. It is so easy to spin, so I got all new nuts on the way. I don't trust driving it and that nut falling off. That will cause some major damage. So I'm just gonna wait till we get new nuts in, and then we'll go through and just do all new nuts, adjust all the valves one more time, and we should be good. But good news is we don't have any freaking coolant leaks. I don't see any leaks. So I think we're good on coolant leaks. We got enough time on it now. I would think it would start leaking by now. Last time, I mean, every other time I ran it after doing that gasket, it leaked right away. So I'm happy about that. We got to fix a couple other little issues with the engine, and this thing should be solid. It's actually running really good other than that lifter loosening up. So kind of a problem. We need some new nuts on it. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna wrap this one up. So coming up soon, we're going to start bodywork. I'm not sure if we're doing bumpers or bodywork first because I have one of my buddies that actually works at a paint shop. He's going to come over and help me with the bodywork on this thing because it's kind of, I mean, there's not a lot of big damage. It's just a ton of just little stuff like on the bed. It's just wavy all the way down, and I would love to learn like the correct way to do all this. So he's gonna come over and give me a little hand with the bodywork, and then we'll paint it. But I'm not sure. I might be working on bumpers kind of while he's doing bodywork. I'm not really sure how that's gonna play out. But either way, we're gonna have a hand with bodywork, and then we're gonna paint and bumpers, and this truck should be pretty much done.